From Ticker, this is Black Belt Leader. Here's Karen Gately.
Welcome to Black Belt Leader. I'm Karen Gately, the founder of Corporate Dojo. On the show today, we're going to be talking to a number of guests who we believe can help all of us to navigate these extraordinary times. We'll spend a bit of time talking to one guest about our personalities and the influence that that has ultimately on how we respond, particularly when life is clearly challenging, complex, unknown. We're going to speak to another guest who's going to help us to understand how we can be productive, how we can be focused, how we can actually get the most from ourselves and our team through this particularly challenging time that we are all facing, especially around working remotely. But first, we are joined by Tamera Jones. Tamera is a leading specialist in the space of change and people leadership. She has a special passion for helping people to understand how they can get past feeling overwhelmed. So we've asked her to join us today to have that conversation. Tamera, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So help us to understand, as a starting point, what are you seeing out there? Well, from your home office, presumably, as you're connecting.
Behind my home office. I guess over the last 20 years, I've really specialized in helping one down from CEO. And that role itself is very indicative of overwhelm, meaning you got a lot of strategic pressure from above and you got a lot of operational pressure from below. And I think it's really been exacerbated over the last little while for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. So, again, when you work with people around overcoming that sense of, helplessness and, how can I get through this? Where do you start with people? What's some of the advice that you share?
I think that it's going back to basics. It's really making sure that we don't change significantly what we know works, but we just add to it. I think about it in three areas: operating rhythm, skill, and mindset. And they're like three dials, and we need to be able to tweak all of those dials simultaneously as we experiment little bits throughout the day to keep ourselves with our mental stamina, our physical energy, and particularly in these days, our emotional vitality to handle everything that's going on.
Fantastic. So unpack that for us a bit. If you can talk us through each of those elements. Again, what's your key takeouts for people, your key bit of advice around, for example, that operating rhythm, your mindset?
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of operating rhythm, I think there's a weekly thing and a daily thing that you can absolutely do from home. In fact, they quite often operate better when you do them from home. Weekly, we're talking about having a coffee with yourself. Now, in these days, it might be having a wine with yourself, most definitely. Sitting down and thinking about two things. Who do I need to be during this period of time? And what do I need to do? Just really chunking it up to go, what are the most key things? Who do I need to be during this really challenging time? What are the characteristics to keep me mentally sharp, emotionally viable, and, physically strong? And what do I need to do? What are the key things each day that need to get done remotely, if necessary? I suppose then you look at daily. Daily is about respite. So clearing the mechanism every 50 minutes. And I know that seems really frequent, but the research clearly shows that every 50 to 70 minutes, we need to be setting our clock, which I do. And when that alarm goes off, you stand up and you do the 3 W's. You have a drink of water, you have a little walk or a stretch, and you say your words. So words, water, walk. Now, what does that mean? The words, remember in your coffee with yourself, you said, this is who I need to be every day to get myself through this. You remind yourself every 50 minutes about how you feel and who you need to be really stable as much as possible in this chaotic time.
Look, I really love that because it gives people a really simple formula to follow, in terms of remembering what the rule book is and what I need to do to maintain that vitality, as you've said, that focus. How do I be my best self? And, I think water is one that I observe a lot of people forgetting to include in their world. And the reality is when we start to become dehydrated, then, clearly our brain function is impacted, our moods are impacted. But also a lot of my clients are saying the same thing. It's that they're actually finding they're moving less, that they're actually sat at their desks, getting, in some cases, not all, a lot of work done, but they're not moving as much. And, I have to confess myself to having, a tighter back and a bit more stiffness as a consequence to just staying in that spot. So I really love that. Get up, move, shift.
Yeah, and it can be really simple too. It can really just walk to the window and have a look out. Like this morning, right before I started getting here with you guys, I went on a 10-minute walk just around the block. Just really simple things that you can do to ensure that by day your emotions and your mental stamina and your physical body feel as good as possible to continue the work that you need to do and to be the person you want to be during all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Pardon me. I'd just like the world to know I'm not actually sick. I just haven't spoken a lot this morning. And, again, I see that everywhere I go. People are actually quite nervous to sneeze, to cough, in case how everybody else feels about that. So, again, let's talk about the potentially overwhelming situation we find ourselves in. And from a mindset perspective, what's your advice to people? How do we actually choose our thinking, choose our mindset so that, we're alert, we're safe, but we're also not frozen by fear?
Yeah, I think in terms of mindset, the whole rhythm that you get into of the weekly coffee with self and then the daily, every hour, having a bit of respite, just reminds you of the perspective that's necessary to be okay during this. I mean, I'm with you. I feel like sometimes it's okay to feel anxious and you just lean into that because it is what it is. But every hour you allow yourself to have that little ground my feet, ground my emotions, come back into my body, have a drink of water, look out at nature and be like, we will get through this. And what do I need to do in the next hour to help my people and to help myself so I can get through this day? I think one of the things, Karen, around skill is to be okay in these days to counteroffer. I know when I look at overwhelm with the people I work with, our tendency not to just say yes and to not say no when we need to can be exacerbated during this. We want to help everyone. We want to be the right person. We want to do the right thing. But in this kind of pressure, it's really important to learn to say, I understand, however, what I suggest is. Really coming back to the fact that saying yes too frequently will lend us in more stress than we want to have. So just being okay to feel like I can counteroffer and I can negotiate how to get stuff done, particularly as we redesign our operating rhythms, doing everything remotely.
Yeah, look, I absolutely agree. That's one of the benefits, again, I'm observing is that we're almost being forced to make choices around priorities, to really maintain those boundaries because, life is suddenly quite complex and juggling is, for some families, for example, two parents sitting at the kitchen table, both trying to work from home with little ones running around the house. Clearly that's incredibly challenging. So again, a lot of my clients are starting to say, look, that doesn't make sense. That's not our priority right now. But here's where we absolutely can have optimal impact. So choosing to focus everyone's minds on what we can do rather than what we can't do and what we should be doing.
Yeah, and feeling okay to do that, I think, so you don't put additional stress on yourself not to feel like you have to please everyone, and do everything perfectly. Particularly those mindsets are detrimental at this time. If I want to please everyone and I want to get everything perfect, well, we know particularly that's not going to happen.
Yeah. And what's your advice to people who are feeling so overwhelmed that, I can't even imagine how my business will come back from this. I can't even imagine how I'll get back into the job market. For those who really are looking down the barrel of feeling helpless, what would your advice be to those people?
I think helplessness very much is akin to feeling overwhelmed when you just are so flooded emotionally that you can't really make a good decision and you don't feel like you can find your way through this. I think we go back to the respite and we go back to the coffee with self, which is sit down, go for a walk, have some water, talk to a friend, and plan your way out of this. I've been impressed with the government that there is so many resources. I'm a sole trader as well, and I'm going to need to make sure I'm on that website, taking care of myself and plan my way out of this. And no, you know what? I'm not the only one that's going through this. Everyone is. So we've all got to make sure that we're taking advantage of the resources at hand and helping each other out by talking through this as much as possible, as much as we need to reground ourselves every day.
Yeah, look, totally agree. I've been both impressed and buoyed by obviously the official support, but also community support in terms of, a lot of the attitudes I'm observing are very giving. They're very much about, how can we support one another through. So for example, I've seen businesses making decisions that, well, we're in a stronger position than some, so we're going to continue to make sure we absolutely are growing and wanting to give our suppliers more opportunity through a time like this. And obviously not everybody is in that kind of position, but fairness is something that I am actually observing. Clearly we need more of that. We need everyone to step right up to it. But I agree, there's a lot of reason to have hope in humanity right now, would be my view.
Yeah, I'm certainly observing that as well with my clients. Everybody is trying to figure out not only how they can help themselves, but they can help each other as well. So it's an extraordinary time to see people be kind and to be in a real community spirit. I agree.
Yeah. Absolutely. So again, what we're talking about here is let's choose our mindsets, let's choose our attitudes, and let's look at what's actually good, let's actually contemplate what advantages we can actually take out of this time. So, again, to those who might be feeling uncertain, obviously you've given us some great advice in terms of those routines and what I can do each day. What other strategies do you have for overcoming a lack of confidence? If somebody is really not certain that they can get through, where do we start from a confidence building perspective?
I think the interesting when you look at confidence and you break it down, it's how I feel about myself and have I ever experienced this before. So it's self-esteem and self-efficacy. Our self-esteem is taking a hit because we're going to be doing things that we've never done before. And our self-efficacy is not there because none of us have ever gone through this. So it does feel like our confidence is really taking a hit. I do come back to the whole thing of managing your emotion and planning your way out of it. So using your intellect and your resources and your community to plan your way out of it. I'm in a group of sole traders that absolutely are on Zoom, talking to one another, figuring out what we can do, and at the same time helping each other ground and know that we will get through this and keep perspective. And coming back to our routines, the once an hour, words, water, walk. Know that if you can get through the next hour, the next day, the next week, the next month, it will end at some point. So having that perspective and keeping your routines in place, I really think that that's a key to ensuring you feel okay during the hard times.
Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for your advice today, Tamera. How can our viewers find out more about you, the work you do? How can they get in touch?
Well, you can see behind me, Potential Change is the name of my organization, and potentialchange.com.au is the website. We're all about liberating leaders from overwhelm. So we're right in the pocket at the moment with helping people feeling overwhelmed. My phone number and the email contact is on that website. So give us a ring or send an email. Happy to help any way I can.
Fabulous. Well, thank you again. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Julie Hyde, who's going to help us to be super efficient, focused and productive through this time.
There are now more ways to watch Ticker. Download our apps for Apple and Android devices. We're live on Twitter and YouTube Live. And you can catch us on Amazon Alexa and Google Home. Head to the Ticker website for more. community has been hit hard by the impacts of coronavirus, but with it comes opportunity too. Ticker brings you the latest information and interviews with startup founders about how to survive and ways to grow. Head to the Ticker website or download the Ticker apps. From Ticker, this is Black Belt Leader. Here's Karen Gately.
Welcome back to Black Belt Leader, where we're talking about how we can all cope through these extraordinary times relating to coronavirus. So joining us next is Julie Hyde. Julie is a very experienced leadership coach and advisor. She's also the author of a book called Busy. So Julie's specialty is helping us to overcome being busy and ultimately to be productive and effective and ultimately drive our team outcomes. So welcome to the show, Julie. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Karen. It's great to be here.
So, to start off with, tell us a bit about your book, Busy, and what its key messages are. What are you trying to say to people about busyness?
Okay, so Busy is very much a resource for leaders to ensure that they are productive in their leadership and also enabling their team to be productive in what they're doing. So it's very much about focusing on what's really important to a leader's leadership and also in terms of what's really important with the business objectives that they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And at no time that I can recall have we all been challenged to the extent that we are to really think about priorities and to really adjust how we go about maintaining productivity. Again, I've got so many different examples of clients who are working in very different circumstances. Tell us what you're seeing. What are some of the ways in which people are having to adapt and work and be productive through this time?
Yeah, so a lot of people are now transitioning or have transitioned to working from home 100% of the time. So that's a very different way of working for a lot of people because we've now lost a routine. So the routine of getting up and going to work has now been replaced by getting up and maybe heading upstairs and starting work.
Or downstairs or to the kitchen bench or...
Exactly. And even like the little rituals that we used to do, getting a coffee on the way to work and talking to, the people at our favourite cafe and just having that interaction, is now gone. People are struggling with this new normal, where in the past it might have been awesome to work from home a couple of days a week, but now this is it.
Exactly. And again, I've had a few people say that to me, that, it's fun periodically, but to have that all day, every day is obviously a whole new challenge. So again, what I heard you say in that is re-establishing some of those routines. I know for myself, I've been trying to be disciplined about setting the alarm, getting up, getting dressed for work, that to try and at least get in the mindset that today's a work day. And for me, I find that important from a productivity focused perspective, just kind of get into the gear. What other advice are you giving people around how do I maintain focus? Let's, for example, talk about the parent that's at home with the young kids. How do they maintain productivity?
Yeah, that's a massive challenge that people are experiencing. They've got kids at home. They might also have their partner at home. So depending on how they're set up, will determine how productive they can be. So I think it's really important for people to communicate really effectively with those around them and establish some very clear boundaries for when they need to be focused. So we can't be focused 100% of the time, but we can certainly determine times where we're going to spend, I call it like a go time. It's spending, that might be 20-minute blocks, or it might be hour blocks where we really need to focus on getting stuff done.
Yeah.
And then enabling ourselves to take a break and do whatever that might be. Get up, walk around, of course, grab some water, speak to those who are demanding of your attention in the household. But it's really trying to limit the distractions that you have in your home for a period of time and establishing those boundaries, but making sure that we're communicating what we're doing with others. Because if we don't do that, they don't understand and will just come in and interrupt anyway. So I find that communication piece really, really important.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, again, I've certainly experienced that, personally observed that with other people as well, is having team meetings as a family around, okay, what are our collective responsibilities here? What do we need to get done? One of my clients shared with me her 2 children's response, which I just thought was absolutely priceless. So the little one, who I believe is about 8 or 9, said to her mother, oh, well, this is very good. This is an opportunity for me to practice my ability to manage my own time, like I'm going to have to do when I'm in high school. So I thought of you, Jules. I thought, well, there you go. She's learning productivity and effectiveness early through this time. The son, however, said to his mum, look, I've been thinking about this. If I work an 8 to 4 day, can I have Fridays off? So he's already negotiating a condensed working week. But there's so many of those types of conversations going on in households, with kids, with partners, around, how do we meet our responsibilities to our employer and obviously cope and deal with the family pressures as well. So let's move beyond families. What is your advice, even, for example, to young professionals? They might even be living alone. Again, how do we maintain focus?
Yeah, I think you mentioned routine before, and I think that's incredibly important to establish a new routine for ourselves now. And, if you used to get up and go to the gym, you might do home gym, you might go for a walk, but whatever that might be, it's maintaining that routine, having breakfast at a particular time, showering at a particular time, being at your desk at a particular time. It's really maintaining that routine, because this is something that we can control.
Yeah.
A routine is something that anchors us in a time of uncertainty. So it can give us a lot of comfort in terms of we do know what we're doing. But it's incredibly important to be very connected to our priorities and understanding what's important to get done, and establishing a particular routine for our work day. So some people might start earlier in the day, others might start later in the day, if that fits in with the workflow of the organisation as well, in terms of the work that you're doing. But it's understanding what works for you and establishing those, I suppose, those timeframes for yourself to be really effective and to be really productive in what you're doing. And then also creating that space for yourself where you've got your workspace that you can leave behind at the end of the day and move into your personal space, because there's a real danger for people to just continually work, particularly if you're at home on your own, and you can really get caught up in that cycle of continuing to work rather than making sure that you have some sort of balance that works for you.
Yeah. Absolutely agree. So again, when you think about some of the ways in which we can remove distraction. So again, what I'm hearing is, okay, we've got our routine in place, we've got a rhythm to our day. What's your advice to leaders in influencing their teams, their level of focus, encouraging those people to avoid those distractions and ultimately get the job done?
Yeah, so for leaders, I've been working with my clients to try and make sure that they're keeping their work days as normal as possible. So if it's about, having meetings at a particular time, that they maintain those meetings, albeit virtually, so that, again, that routine is kept. But it's having more communication with their team and checking in with them, because there are so many other distractions around the home. There's dirty windows, there's washing, there's cats, there's dogs, there's kids. All of these things that can take our attention. So it's really important for leaders to ensure that their team has clarity around what their output needs to be, and then checking in with them on a really consistent basis to see how they're going and to understand if they're having any challenges that they need to work through. So a lot of people won't necessarily raise their hand and say, hey, I'm not really understanding what I'm doing, out of fear at the moment.
Absolutely. And look, and I've had a couple of examples where, people have said, no, we're fine. We don't necessarily need team meetings too often. But, what they have discovered is that when they have created daily opportunities, regular opportunities to be in touch, they're actually learning together. They're actually solving problems together. And to a certain extent, avoiding that sense of isolation.
Yes, absolutely. And that's something, as we go through and people are working from home for longer periods of time, I think that's going to be crucial for leaders in terms of supporting their team's mental health.
Absolutely.
And trying as much as they possibly can to alleviate this feeling of isolation. So through the virtual technology that we have available to us now, thank goodness, is certainly one way that we can do that. But, the old-fashioned way of picking up the phone as well is also great. But leaders need to listen intently now, not only to the words, but also the tone and observing people's body language on, when they are seeing them online.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I've been very grateful. A couple of our clients have reached out with a message asking, are you okay? And, that's really generous spirited and certainly helped my team and I to feel supported and, surrounded by people who do care. We are okay, by the way, we're fine. But, again, it's that care factor, it's the reaching out. And again, I would absolutely back your view that the leaders need to be more in touch than less. I've had a couple of leaders who have said that now's, a great time to head down, backside up, get the job done. But they're not necessarily spending enough time reaching out to the people in their group. So again, as you've just pointed out, in order for us to have a positive influence on mental health, mental well-being, let alone productivity, clearly having regular communication, connecting on a regular basis is vital. So, Julie, do you have any other key tips, if you like, that you want to share with people today around just coping with this time that we're all working through?
What we all need to do, leaders and, those with careers, anyone really, is to make sure that we're creating space for ourselves. It's a very noisy time. There's a lot of noise coming at us from the media and from social media. So it's really about shutting that down for a period of time every day and allowing ourselves to think in the quiet and just understand what's going on for us, understand how we're being, what we're doing, and what are the thoughts that are troubling us, and just getting those down on paper, the old-fashioned way, journaling, or it could be through meditation. But I think really creating that space at a time that's incredibly potentially crowded in the home and also crowded in terms of all the noise that we're exposed to is going to be really important for us to support our own mental health.
Yeah. Love it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Julie. How can our viewers find out more about you and get in touch?
The best place is via my website, juliehyde with y.com.au, and I'm on all social media channels as well. But I've got a lot of resources on my website that people might find handy.
Excellent. Definitely encourage people to go and check out Julie's website. Thank you again for joining us. We're going to go on a short break, and when we come back, Conor Wynn will be joining us.
There are now more ways to watch Ticker. Download our apps for Apple and Android devices. We're live on Twitter and YouTube Live. And you can catch us on Amazon Alexa and Google Home. Head to the Ticker website for more. Community has been hit hard by the impacts of coronavirus, but with it comes opportunity too. Ticker brings you the latest information and interviews with startup founders about how to survive and ways to grow. Head to the Ticker website or download the Ticker apps. From Ticker, this is Black Belt Leader. Here's Karen Gately.
Welcome back to Black Belt Leader. Next joining us is Conor Wynn from Sign. Conor is currently undertaking a PhD studying impacts of power, I believe, on project governance. So we're very excited to have Conor here to talk about, some of the psychology involved in how we respond to these circumstances that we each face at the moment. So welcome to the show, Conor.
Thanks, Karen. Nice to be here.
Great to have you. So again, give us a bit of insight to what you're seeing. What is relevant from your experience? What should leaders be aware of when it comes to people's mindsets, their psychology, and the current climate that they're working in?
So one of the things I've highlighted recently is that you'll be getting cues from your personality as to how to behave. So for individuals, self-awareness and understanding what your personality is, I think is a good place to start. And for leaders, understanding the personality of the people on their team is a great place to start.
Yeah.
So in terms of personality, I've used the Big Five model, which is described by the acronym OCEAN: openness, conscientiousness, agreeableness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
Yeah. So again, couldn't agree more. Where do people start when it comes to self-awareness? I actually recently read some research which I thought was fabulous by Dr. Tasha Ulrich, who said that something along the lines of 95% of us believe we're self-aware, and the data shows that 10% of us actually are, which again is quite a amusing insight to the way so many of us operate. So how do people start to build self-awareness?
Well, there's quite a bit of available online in terms of questionnaires. So there's I'd encourage people there's quite a few tools available just to do the Big Five personality test. That will be a very good place to start. And you can see where you are on those 5 dimensions.
So presumably there's some online resources that people can get on and find that relatively easily?
Yeah, there are. I mean, there are commercial sites, but there are also some free sites that are generally backed by universities, which will allow you to do a fairly quick assessment of your position on those five traits.
So, of those 5 traits, what do you observe having the most relevance right now? I know you and I had a conversation the other day around neuroticism. Help us to understand a bit more about that and how you see that being relevant.
Yeah, neuroticism is a trait which is susceptibility to negative emotion, and that's comprised of aspects of volatility, blowing hot and cold, and likelihood to withdraw, which might be seen as a form of depression. Yeah. So people who are neurotic, they're the people who are most likely the people fighting in the aisles over toilet paper. Yes. They're not necessarily disagreeable people. They just want to get their fair share, and it's a kind of defensive aggression in some ways. So in a difficult situation where they're being jostled or where there's scarcity and the social proof of scarcity, they're likely to react in a negative way and to fight with what looks like theirs. So neuroticism is one of the key things to look at particularly in these times. People who have low neuroticism will cope pretty well in this environment.
Yeah. And again, this is such a key message to leaders, isn't it? When we say to leaders it's work to have empathy, that can be easier said than done. If we don't share the same fears or we don't share the same depth of concern. So for leaders to truly understand each of their people, and whilst we don't want to run around businesses labelling people as neurotic, most people don't respond well to that word. Yeah. But to again have empathy around, there is in many cases an unconscious reaction around fear that's really driving, because I can well imagine some people responding in ways that are aggressive when faced with realities of news that their employer has to deliver as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge. It's a challenging time for all of us, particularly for leaders, I think, because empathy is thought to be an aspect of trait agreeableness. So people can feign concern, but genuine concern is fairly well picked up. I think it will be a test for leaders in relation to their empathy for staff as to some people will do well at this and some people will not. And in terms of understanding your team, I think it's if you are concerned about them, and you should be, it's about trying to guess how susceptible some of your team are to negative emotions. Some won't be. Some will be pretty even keel. And some will be susceptible. Those people need they will need to be treated. They'll all need to be treated differently. I mean, one of the difficulties in this situation is not to treat everybody the same way, because people's personalities are different. The change in circumstance that we see now will affect different people differently.
So, what's your number one piece of advice to leaders then? With that said, what do you think leaders need to do right now to support their teams through this time?
I think they need to understand their people as they have never understood them before. In a normal situation and with normal structures around them, it will be much more difficult in those situations to understand people. Now, with a lot of the changes and a lot of the social structures pulled away, I think it will expose and will make it a little bit easier in some ways for leaders to understand their people. But the first emphasis, the first thing they need to do is to understand those people and the kind of cues that their personality is sending them as to how to behave. Secondly, I know you only asked for one. Secondly, to understand themselves as leaders and to understand these signals that their personality is sending them. And the combination of those two, I think this could be a period of great insight for leaders.
Fabulous. Absolutely agree, Conor. Really appreciate you joining us on the show today. How can our viewers find you, get more information about what you do?
I'm on LinkedIn. It's probably the best place to catch me on Conor Wynn on LinkedIn.
Conor Wynn, LinkedIn. And as I said, great to have you on the show. Really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's all we have for the show today. Thanks for joining us. If there are topics you're keen for us to explore, please get in touch via our website, corporatedojo.com, or via any of our social media channels. And remember, will you choose to be an awesome or an ordinary leader of your people?
There are now more ways to watch Ticker. Download our apps for Apple and Android devices. We're live on Twitter and YouTube Live. And you can catch us on Amazon Alexa and Google Home. Head to the Ticker website for more.